Okay, next question says, explicit costs are payments the firm makes for one, outputs such as desks for its employees, whereas implicit costs are expenditure costs that occur for services such as travel expenses for its employees. Two, outputs such as desks for its employees, whereas implicit costs are non-expenditure costs that occur through the use of self-owned resources such as foregone income. Three, inputs such as wages and salaries to its employees, whereas implicit costs are non-expenditure costs that occur through the use of self-owned resources such as foregone income. And four, inputs such as wages and salaries to its employees, whereas implicit costs are expenditure costs that occur for services such as travel expenses for employees. So, sorry. What we're really trying to contrast here are a difference between explicit and implicit costs, right? First thing we have to deal with is whose costs are these? And we're doing this from the firm side, from the supplier side, right? So the costs that we're talking about are costs for inputs into production, right? Outputs of a firm are going to be a result of both implicit and explicit costs. It's the inputs such as wages or inputs such as resources required to produce a good, like raw materials. Those are the costs that are explicitly noted, right? And so we can draw a parallel between explicit costs and accounting costs, which are things that you're actually paying for, right? Like with money. And so those are your explicit costs. Your implicit costs, however, are your economic costs, the things that you are giving up, the opportunity cost of your decision. It's not money per se, that you aren't spending money on these implicit costs. It's more so a foregone opportunity to make money somewhere else. And so that's the real big difference. And so let's go down the line and see which one of these answer choices best matches up with this definition of explicit versus implicit costs. So the first thing we notice is that both 1 and 2 talk about outputs, right? And we already noted that explicit costs are for inputs. It doesn't really make sense to classify them as costs of outputs. And so 1 and 2 are both going to be incorrect. Now 3 says explicit costs are inputs such as wages and salaries for employees, which is true. And they also talk about implicit costs as non-expenditure costs occurring through the use of self-owned resources such as foregone income. And this is also true, right? As foregone income is definitely an opportunity cost of pursuing some sort of venture. So let's just check number 4 to make sure. 4 says inputs as well, and it says implicit costs are expenditure costs that occur for services such as travel expenses for employees. Again, that's something that you could bill, like objectively bill onto an accounting book. So that's not really going to be implicit, it's more so explicit. So 3 is still going to be the best answer here. And the previous tutor also said 3. And they said that there are 2 categories of costs, namely explicit and implicit costs, which collectively make the total cost of production for a firm. Explicit costs are out-of-pocket direct expenses that are made on various factors of production, especially variable factors. And the wages and salaries paid to employees are paid in cash and hence represent explicit expenditure. Implicit costs are non-expenditure costs that occur due to the mere existence of an economic action, or I would say choice. There are certain factors that do not exhaust resources directly, such as self-owned factors. For example, if an economic agent uses his or her own property to start a business, he or she didn't pay himself or herself explicitly, hence did not incur any explicit costs, but at the same time, they forgo the income they could have earned from the property by renting it out. That's true. So this opportunity cost of action forms the implicit costs. Good answer, right? It covers the basis of what we were talking about, the difference between explicit and implicit costs. Okay, great.